Welcome to Camp Confidential, Beyond the Bars. I'm Katrina McLaren, and with my co-host Cheryl Womack, author, entrepreneur and philanthropist, we tell it like it is. In Season 1, we take you inside the walls of the Women's Federal Prison Camp. From pre-sentencing to navigating daily life behind bars, we offer practical advice, survival strategies and insights that no one tells you before you go in. No sugarcoating, no cliches. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. Be sure to do your own research and consult a professional. Today's episode is entitled Faith Behind Bars and is based off the book How to Go to Camp Surviving in a Women's Federal Prison by the Cheryl Womack, available now on Amazon. Now, Cheryl, you hear so many stories on how people find religion while incarcerated. Did your religious beliefs change in any way during your time in prison? And if so, how?
I think that you start thinking more about your purpose in life and God when you have the possibility of going to prison way before you get there. I mean, you're just going, why is this happening to me? And so I think you get more religious and think more in terms of, what's the purpose of life, and because it's such a transformative and different thing to happen to you, that religion definitely comes into the picture before you ever get there. And then for me, the little gal that I first met the first night ran a program where they had a singing program every Thursday night. And I got there on a Thursday. And so on Thursday nights, they go and sing religious hymns. And I thought, well, it'll give me something to do before bedtime, so I'll go. And it's a 1-hour program. So I went with her and I went, which is this really hard thing to do for anybody who did it. And she captured a lot of people like that, because you're looking for something to do. You're trying to keep calm. You also figure that's a good way to find out who's a good person, who's not such a good person. So you go in there and they start singing religious hymns and stuff, and you just cry like a baby. I mean, it just makes you blubber and cry. It's very, very emotional that night anyway, and that makes it even more emotional. And especially if you haven't been able to reach out to your family or anything else. So religion, I think for me, especially the way it came up, hit me in the face that night, but it had already come more front and center. I mean, being raised Catholic, I always had a basic faith, but you think about, why am I here and what's my purpose? What am I supposed to do with this?
Do you find that it helped you cope with the experience?
I think having faith helps you cope with this and any experience. And it definitely helped me cope with this. I mean, I came to terms that, God doesn't give you anything you can't make it through. And certainly there's something I needed to learn about this lesson. So let's go see what's going to happen on it. And I think having a faith greater than just the belief of myself and mankind made it an easier thing for me to do.
So do you find that you drew more upon your religious beliefs while you were in prison? Did you find that comforting?
I think initially when I got there, I thought more about my religious beliefs until I had a system in place. And then I think I went back to, I have my faith and I believe in the things I believe in, but I wasn't probably as caught up by it as some people can be. And as some people get there the most, and that's what they do the most, is get caught up in their religious beliefs. I'm going to tell you another thing is that because I felt like I was basically shaken down and didn't do anything wrong, I was looking for a purpose for why is this happening to me, where you could see many women are coming in there repentant, and they damaged their family, and they've killed their jobs, and they've killed their place in society. And, there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot of shame, and you could see how religion would become extremely important to them.
So you think it really, for other inmates, they were able to draw comfort and solace from religion in different forms?
I think most of them do. Not all of them, but I think most of them do, yes.
So what sort of religious services were offered at camp while you were there? Because I'm assuming there's a lot of different denominations.
They have everything. They have every they have Christian programs. They have a more extremely Christian program that's got a lot more elaborate, a lot longer. And like they have a morning and an evening program. They have a basic Christian program where you just go once a day, probably like the Lutherans, which are very similar to Catholics. They have a Catholic church ceremony once a week. They have their Wednesday night programs for the people who would go on Wednesday nights. When you get in there, you can write, and they give you a form where you can write away for a Bible that they'll send you. It takes a long time to get in there, but many, many, many girls had their own Bible while they were in there and would read the Bible. Or a lot of us had a book called Jesus Calling. And it's just like a little scripture that you read every single day to just make you feel better about your day. And so a lot of people did that. I had one of those books. A friend of mine had sent it to me, and I was happy to have it.
Did you take that with you when you left?
Yes, I still have that book. Absolutely.
Yeah, I noticed it because you mentioned in the previous podcast that you had bought rosaries while you were there. So I was curious as to what you may have taken back with you home.
Yeah. Again, being raised Catholic with rosaries and doing rosaries, those were familiar things to me. And I wanted to support my friend who was making them, but she also made beautiful rosaries. So I like the rosary. I bought some, but I didn't ever get a Bible while I was in there. I didn't ever get the Bible and study the Bible while I was in there, but I did do the Jesus Calling, and I brought the book home with me when I came home. Absolutely.
Do you think that with the different religious representations, do you think they're represented equally, or do some faiths obviously have more resources than others?
I think they're as good as probably the girls who in the prison are involved in them. For example, the one that has Wednesday nights and twice a day on Sundays are very represented. A lot of the Black women go to those, and they're very represented. Now, not all Black, but a lot of the Black women go to those, and they have whole programs and services and all sorts of things that go on. And they might have a Bible study in between. They had Bible study classes that you could participate in. So women who believed in witchcraft, they had that program. They had a program where the Native Americans could come in and they could, they burn logs and they'd create a fire and they do something for some ceremony on a couple times, like once a quarter, once a month. So they have that available. So they do try to make everything available that somebody needs, but you have to, if it's not there, you have to tell them what your needs are. Yeah, I think it's very representative.
So did you feel that the prison staff encouraged or maybe discouraged religious practices?
Well, I think it was really up to you and how involved you wanted to be. I really felt like it was like in the real world. If you wanted to go to church more often, or you wanted to go pray more often, if you wanted to go where the services were performed for the Catholic Church and the Lutheran Church, you could rent that room out and watch Christian movies that night with a group of people. And there were times that people would do that in groups and stuff. Again, you could be as involved as you wanted to be. You found the people who, would be holier than thou in these services or act like they're holier than thou, and they may as well have been the devil when they were not in there.
Oh, it's an interesting dynamic shift. So did you feel there was that real sort of strong sense of religious community among the inmates?
I felt the sense of people being religious more in prison than I felt it in my real world. I mean, because again, in a Catholic environment, you go to church once a week. You can go more around holidays and different around Easter and Lent and things like that, but you really just go for an hour, once a week. And other churches go quite a bit more. I'm sure you can sign up for Bible study and do some things like that within the Catholic Church. They do a lot of Bible study in the other religions. And so you just were aware and saw a lot more.
So you didn't find there was like sort of different religious groups infighting or anything like that? It didn't seem, or as everyone pretty much did their own thing in that regard? You didn't find it was a source of conflict?
They did their own thing. Now, I'm not going to say there's not a source of conflict amongst them in positionings of power and who's in charge and what's going on. But certainly, I think there was enough space for the women every now and then, because of maybe the prisons being in lockdown or holidays backing up on each other or something. You could really see an uproar if they couldn't get in and do their programs the way they were routinely supposed to do their programs, and things had to change. It could get very ugly. You could hear about it, and it's loud, and they're not happy because it's as much their routine and what they're doing with their life as much as their faith. So again, you get a routine established when you're there, and things that disrupt your routines are very disruptive to what your life is now as you know it.
So did you see that there was any instances of like discrimination as such or favoritism towards different religious groups while you were there?
I didn't. No, I didn't see that at all. No.
In other words, did you find that the inmates, they sort of hung around in those cliques of religious groups, or do you think it went beyond religion in that way as far as the cliques and how they were formed?
Well, I think there were cliques within the religious groups. For example, if you were in the one program that had a lot more services, they would have a choir. And so they would have choir practice. This one particular woman in our prison pretty much had been there for 5 years, I think, like 4 years out of 5 while I was there. And she had garnered her way up to the top of it. She picked who could be in the choir and not in the choir. She picked when choir practices were going to happen. She picked what was going to be sang. I mean, she was she was large and in charge, and she wanted to be. So, I mean, it gave her a different kind of power on the camp. And now there are a lot of girls who also appreciated the things that she did and was glad that she created the services and stuff. But there were others who were like, if you wanted to provide any input for stuff, she would act like she'd listen to you, but then she'd do it exactly what she wanted to.
So there was also people could wield religion for power of their own gain in effect.
Absolutely. You saw that in every one of the religious programs that, from the seating that takes place to, for example, who gets up and does the reading in church or who gets up and has a position in front of everybody talking. In their minds, it felt like to me, they were more holy because they were presenting, the word of God. And they were doing those kinds of things. And other people who might want to participate more just couldn't get themselves into a position to do it while that person was so large and in charge. They just couldn't do it.
And I'm sure too, because of the environment you're in prison, you're in a camp, it's confined, everyone's in there for varying reasons, that people are going to take advantage of that as well and maybe wield religion in a way that perhaps it shouldn't be wielded. I mean, you have mentioned too that there was a level of, if you were a chapel administrator or something like that, as far as one of your prison jobs, you got access to your own office, your own
Right.
television.
Your
So
own
these were
television.
perks that were outside, someone that's cleaning up the general rubbish around the prison as a job does not get those sort of perks. So indirectly, religion is put on a higher pedestal. Was that frustrating?
I think that was real frustrating, especially for the smaller segments where the religious offices were, and the one gal had a pretty good sized office and a good sized TV. And so if you're in the gym or you're in the TV room, you have to pick between three TVs, wear your earbuds, and pick whatever has been scheduled to be on the TVs. You really don't have any control over what you're watching other than to go or not to go. You had your own TV. You picked when. You didn't have to wear earbuds. You could hear the TV all the time. You could stay out and stay away from everybody else till 9 o'clock at night.
You had
So you had
privacy,
your
and
own
that's a big commodity, right?
huge. I mean, you had privacy. You didn't have that kind of privacy in your room. So you really, really had privacy.
Let's discuss for a second, different religious beliefs come with different dietary requirements. Did the prison cater for that?
They did a really good job, I think, of catering for that too. And for example, dinner was done by probably 4:20 every day, 4:30 at the latest. You're supposed to go to 5 o'clock meal. Well, during some of the Islamic holidays, they have to fast until after dark. And so they would allow them to get a to-go meal to have and set it aside and eat it after dark. Not after dark, but after sundown. And in the summertime, if they were doing that, summer, fall, whenever it was, it could be quite late before they were able to eat.
So do you think that other prisoners, do you think that impacted on the way the other inmates supported each other sort of emotionally or not really?
Again, I think other than the people who are using it for power plays or for special privileges, I think it's like religion anywhere. It just was what it was. But it just, again, you've got the people who became large and in charge and used their position throughout the campus to always be in charge of something and have a bigger role in something. And, again, this one gal who ran everything in the bigger one would be on her knees at 8 o'clock every night to praying in front of everybody to go to bed at 8 o'clock. And then if she heard anybody talking, that woke her up after, and she got up early to go for the 5:30 mailroom stuff. But if she heard you after 8 o'clock, she would come take you out like a Jezebel. She was like the devil incarnated, came after you because somebody might be giggling somewhere else. And you can make noise until 9 o'clock at night. And then you're supposed to be quiet from 9 to 10. So it's like, if you know that's a problem, maybe you should stay up till 9 o'clock.
It's kind of that flip side, isn't it, of inflicting your beliefs and opinions on others in varying ways, and maybe not just around a religion, but anything like in that regard.
A number of them were not. They tried to act holier than thou, and they were not the turn the other cheek kind of people at all. They were not. I mean, it's a standing joke, but there's some truth to it. That honest to goodness, that you've got the people when they come in and they start putting their hands up to pray, or they go up really high, or the more they're swinging the arms and carrying on like the waving the wheat, probably the more they're probably not real. There was a woman in there who had her minister come see her, and we're all convinced her minister was way more than her minister, and came to see her way more than her husband did. You're just like, oh, and she was just, everything was God this and God that. But then she'd talk about somebody like the devil. And it's like, people pay attention that you're either walking the talk or everything you say is baloney.
So were religious leaders made available to the inmates, to the women?
We had a rectory person who was there, and he was Catholic, and so he did the Catholic services. Not really. You knew if you got called to the chapel, which is what it was called, even though it's just another room. If you got called to the chapel, it's likely because somebody was really sick or died in your family. It was not a good situation. Otherwise, you didn't go to the chapel.
But obviously that woman that you were referencing before her chaplain was able to come in and see her as a part of her visitation list. So that's something that could be arranged.
Well, you could put him on the visitors list, sure. Now, he didn't get come any than any other times. My point is, she'd do these fasting, and she wouldn't eat these things, and she would only eat certain things, and she'd always be quoting Bible verse to you constantly. And then you'd watch her do stuff that's just like, well, you're the devil. A religious person, a Christian person wouldn't do this. They just wouldn't, for other actions that she had. And then, like I said, I was in the visiting room every weekend. And so when this preacher came to see her, and she'd say, oh, my pastor came to see me, and she's just way too excited to see her, which could be sincerely, you're happy to see your pastor, but it was different. It was just different. So you're just like, oh.
So tell me, did you think were there any religious programs that help with rehabilitation or personal growth inside?
Absolutely not. I mean, you got out of it. Like so many things are made available to you in prison so that you aren't denied anything, but nothing, I don't think very little is done in a thoughtful way to ask, how does this make this person better? Now, it would be discriminating and against the law not to make things available for their religion. So I don't really think anybody gave it any thought to how will this improve the quality of this person's life. I just don't think that ever came up. And to me,
Think it was maybe more about ticking boxes rather than it being a genuine follow through of something to better someone?
absolutely. It's just sort of like in the cafeteria when you get your certain food, it's to meet the calorie count, not necessarily nutritionally good.
When you were actually released, did you find that prison affected your faith when you were on the outside and you were back in, I suppose, normalized society?
Let me think. I think before I got out, I sort of went back to my normal. I mean, I think you thought more about God. And I think when you come back out, you're still dealing with what's happened to you. And so I think you're still trying to put together what's this all about. And there's got to be a higher power that made you survive this or allowed this to happen to you. And what are you supposed to do with this? And so, I mean, I think I would assume everybody goes through that. I did. I certainly went through it and goes, now what am I supposed to do with this? And what does this mean to my life now? And again, thinking on a more religious, on a higher power than I would just think. I mean, it made it easier for me, I think, at that point in my life to say, I believe in God, I have a faith, all the things that I probably didn't in the business world probably talk about too much.
And you grew up in a Catholic family, but
Yeah.
I don't ever recall faith being a part of, when I worked with you, your daily existence as such, or in your reality in that way. That's
Well,
not
like
to say that you didn't believe, but just it wasn't forefront. It wasn't to the front of everything.
all good Catholics, we weren't really great at practicing it. I think if you grew up a lot of times when you've grown up as a child in the Catholic Church, you're just not so good at practicing it. Now, we all go through the stages when we have our kids and we're going to church every Sunday and then your kids grow up and you stop again. Some people, I mean, that's some people, but I always had my faith. It became much more real and important to me, which it did anytime something really got hard for me in life, really, really hard for me in life. It wouldn't be, I mean, in business, I would pray to God that I'd get something accomplished that I had to have done by a Friday because on Monday the world was going to fall apart in my business. You could tell I was so nervous that I went with 2 different colored earrings. And, and of course, the people I'm begging to get the help with from the business on the business trip noticed that, which I did not, because you're so nervous. But I'm just going, please, God, make this happen. And it happened, and you're just like, I think sometimes you just reach to something higher. You can't just wish for things and not expect them to happen. And I think you reach for it in other parts of your life, but in prison, you're pretty isolated. And again, a lot of people there are having a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And they can go to very dark, dark places in their mind. And I can't imagine how many times they ask for forgiveness. I can't imagine how many times they're trying to recover from shame. I bet often. And the longer you're in, I bet initially it takes you a while to just get out of that place unless you've got somebody to help you walk through it through counseling and some other things. And again, take you to the point saying, at what point are you done being sorry and saying, I'm just a better person now? Again, it's getting past the prison mentality to, you're here doing your time. What's life look like next?
So do you think with religion, because it provides a certain level of structure, that women also find that appealing in prison because their whole worlds have been turned upside down and everything about prison is like Groundhog Day? It's completely structured, the same thing day after day, and the repetitiveness of it. So do you think women also find that comforting from that point of view, that there's structure?
I think more than the structure, when you go to church for those kinds of things, whichever church you're going to, you don't have the PA system going off. You don't have anybody showing up and getting wild. It's a very controlled, quiet atmosphere. So it is a safe place. It is an emotionally and mentally safe place, at least for an hour, a couple hours out of the day, that you're not going to find just walking the track, going to the gym. I mean, you don't know what could disrupt when you're somewhere else. Or my area that I lived was like Grand Central Station. There's somebody always coming in and out and bringing a letter or a book or asking a question or something. When you're in church, you don't have those disruptions. So it was a way for you to, I think, take control and try to have a very calm period in your life. And I would think that a lot of people throughout every week would find that very comforting.
As far as religion, when you come out of prison, you're back in normal life. We understand that you sort of moved back into more of what your life looked like before. But while you were in prison, you said that God maybe gave you, what was the purpose? You were looking for meaning, and why did this, in a way, it's kind of that, why did this happen to me? When you were in prison is when you made the decision that you were going to write about this process and the lack of information you had. Do you think that the book stemmed from this, from you, for that determination of wanting to give something back, and from your faith and how that all came about?
I really believe from the bottom of my heart that God put me there to learn about this system. And I don't know if he necessarily expected me to take it and say, I mean, everybody who goes in there and sees the things that are wrong with it want to change it. And so now you've got to figure out, to what level do you want to change it? And with whom do you want to change it? And again, I think instead of these grandiose, big sweeping changes that you can talk about that are probably never going to happen, I like the smaller steps of, again, exposing the world at large, exposing the people who work within the system to understand more about the other systems. And I mean, I think that was part of God's choice for me to go there and help other women. As a business owner, I helped plenty of women, but this was a different kind of help. This was getting down to the root of self-esteem and caring for themselves and understanding themselves. And I think the other part too is, I'm not going to say God didn't say maybe you need a little humbling in your life, Cheryl, because I eat crow, and most of the world doesn't know, that I feel like I've been shaken down. Most of the world just thinks that I'm a tax cheat and I went to jail. Well, they couldn't be more wrong. But having said that, part of it is I want to get the story out for what really happened to me. But if I just get the story out for what really happened to me, I really didn't make any changes or do anything for good. And just like I had a business that, had on-site daycare and did things well above and beyond what you do as a good business. We were a great business for how we took care of our employees. I also now want to do more with this whole new life I've been exposed to. A lot of people couldn't make those changes. I don't think they have the know-how or the contacts or the skill sets. And God gave me all those things. So I think that's a really good use of my talents, to take this and see how far I can take it.
Thank you for listening to How to Go to Camp with Katrina McLaren and Cheryl Womack. For more support, check out the Women of Worth website, www.womenofworth.wow.org, where you'll find helpful resources, including Cheryl's books, Mummy Loves You Everywhere and How to Go to Camp, Surviving in a Women's Federal Prison. Whether you're preparing for the journey or supporting someone through it, remember, there's guidance, hope, and a community ready to help you navigate this path.